we're talking about sharing our lives in community with others, and more specifically, how life in community impacts how we make disciples. We're speaking with Austin Catalano from Lyman, Maine. Austin is a mom of four, entrepreneur, coach to women leaders, everyday disciple maker who has lots of experience making disciples both inside and outside the church. I'm Gina Mueller, disciple making catalyst for Vision New England, and your host today for The Church in Action. Austin, so fun to have you on the podcast today.
Good morning.
Good
I'm excited to be here.
morning. Why don't you start us off with some introductions? Tell us a bit about who you are, what you do, where you live, all the things.
Sure. I think it probably is helpful to know that my context is slightly rural. So if you've heard the term town and country, that's where we live. So it's we are close to cities and things like that, but our context is we're in the woods. So we're a little bit more rural. Um, I'm a New Englander, born and raised, and I've done all my higher education here in New England. So I love New England.
You're
Um,
purebred.
I'm from here. I'm not from away. But I am in Southern Maine right now, and so that's where I've been for the last uh, almost 25 years. Kind of in the same area, and my husband and I did church planted 17 years ago and started the deep dive into discipleship because it wasn't really going the way that we thought it might. Not that the church plant wasn't successful, it was. It's just the growth in people was not quite what we had anticipated. And so for like 10 to, geez, going on 12, 15 years now, we have really gone down the rabbit hole with discipleship. And we we've just been practitioners of discipleship ever since.
Love it.
It's like radically has transformed our lives. So
Yeah, I can't wait to talk more about this. We didn't yet tell the people that you and I are actual friends in real life, and that we would consider our families to be spiritual family together. That might come up later
Mm.
in the episode, so I feel like that could be helpful context
That's probably is, yeah.
for those that are listening in. But let me kind of set up our conversation a little bit. So we're spending a few weeks here on the Church in Action talking about making disciples. And when I look at the way that Jesus made disciples, there is so much of their formation that happened in community. And so it seems like this whole journey for disciples, for the disciple, it doesn't look, when I read scripture, it's not just an individual journey. It seems to be a communal one. And so if we really kind of get into how Jesus made disciples,
Yeah.
it seems like the process of discipleship and formation happening in community seems to be one of those kind of key principles for the way of Jesus. And I know this has been a huge part of your journey that the Lord has had you on over the last 10 plus years. So can you talk to us about that? Can you tell us about kind of how the Lord is shaping your idea of life in community and things like that?
Yeah. Um, I mean, I think Jesus never sent people out alone. So I think that there's a real kingdom principle. I think there's kingdom power in the fact that people were sent out in twos. Part of it is because I mean, if I was to be honest, frankly, I'm scared to do stuff by myself. That's nerve-wracking. So I think that we need people to be with us so that we can we have trust, we have accountability, but then we also have somebody to kind of be in it with us. And so we found that I mean, I think immediately of a story. um, I mean, there's a couple of things. If we want to see massive kingdom movement, we need prayer. We need people to gather together and like be in it together, and then we need people to go out and do the work. And so as we talk about discipleship, all those things are like key pieces of what are we doing to move the needle in each of those areas. And years ago, I had a discipleship group that I was a part of, and one of the women said that she felt like God was calling her to pray at a lunch distribution spot. So in the summer, one of our local towns has like 80% of the kids have food insecurity. So we have several locations where you can go and get a free lunch for kids Monday through Friday when schools aren't in session. And she had been thinking about it, praying about it. And she's like, I feel like God is telling me to go to this one location at lunch when the kids are getting their their food, their lunches, and just walk and pray. And I was like, that's great. And she's like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go alone. And immediately somebody else in our discipleship group was like, I'll come meet you. I'll do it with you. And I think her comment was something to the effect of, I'll, I'll make it so you don't look crazy. So I feel like we need community so that we don't look crazy. Like we're not alone. But the other side of that is two things happened in that interaction that are really important, I think. One is somebody has a place to bring what they think God is saying back to them, back to, and say, this is what I think God is saying. And as a collective, we're able to say, and what about this? And what about this? And ask questions. And kind of, it does two things. One, if she's on the wrong track, it helps direct her on the right track. And if she's on the right track, it helps clarify so that it builds confidence. It's that mustard seed of faith. And then it allowed another person to be able to say, I would love to go do that with you. And so they did that like all summer. They went to this one distribution site and they would walk the perimeter, and it just looked like they were two ladies out on a, doing their stroll, but they were very, very much interceding for all the families who showed up there. And so I just think that without community, we don't have some of the gift that I think Jesus was offering us in that.
That's so good. I love that story. So when we talk about kind of taking steps towards sharing our lives in much deeper community, there's there's so much that we could talk about that the whole idea of what it looks like to more deeply kind of share our lives in community. But what you're talking about is this idea of there's so much of our own journey with Jesus that becomes much deeper and richer when it's with other people rather than just being our own kind of personal walk with the Lord. And
Yeah.
so I hear you talking about the ways that we're pursuing Jesus together and the
Mhm.
ways that we're learning to share our lives together and the ways that we're living on mission together. How so I kind of hear you already talking about how this idea of making disciples in community has shaped kind of your understanding of discipleship over time. How is that different than maybe your understanding of discipleship within church, kind of church life beforehand? What's the difference?
Oh, who, honestly, uh, I love that question. Um, I think for me, I was able to put discipleship in a box. It was curriculum. It was teach me how to do this thing, and I'm going to learn more about the Lord, and I don't really know. My relationship with God will get deeper, and that felt more like that's what discipleship was. Um, when I started to do what I think Jesus is asking us to do, which is share our table and engage with people out in the real world and not just be like, come to church with me. Like that was if I can get better about talking about God, then I can invite people to church. And therefore that's me going and making disciples. That would have been my definition. And I probably would have actually felt pretty good about that. I mean, I think I did feel good about that. But what started to erode was, that thinking was, that is actually not where the people who don't need Jesus, I mean, who don't need Jesus, who don't know Jesus, that's not where they are. And so many people are not ready to make that connection. And then when they do, they come into a community that I love churches, but the fellowship hour is not what I'm talking about. And I don't say that to be critical. I love the church. I love what the church offers. I love the consistency of a body coming together. But when I'm in the fellowship hall after church on a Sunday, I can choose to share whatever it is I want to share. When I'm in a discipleship group, I there's a different level of authenticity. There's a different level of accountability. Um, I have invited people to hold me accountable. These are the places where I'm choosing to confess the things that I need to bring to light. So that is different, and that I think is what actually is the gift that's being offered. but it's challenging too because it's a high degree of trust. It's like those are not things that I share with every, every person that I encounter. Those are things that I feel like I have selectively found groups of people to be able to share those things with that I'm safe. Um, but I think that's the call, is that we have to find those people. And then from that place, you're able to really lean in to the risky steps of faith. And they're risky. Like if you're going to go introduce yourself to all of your neighbors who you've never met before and say, "Hi, you want to come to my house?" which we've done, that's a risky step of faith, and I need to know that people are in my corner and that people are praying for me. And not that they're just praying, not that they're just not that they're just like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna pray for you. Oh, I'm praying for you," and send me prayer hands on a text thread.
That's so good. That's so good. Okay, so I hear you talking about a few things. I hear you talking about how um, essentially you have given permission to a select group of relationships that they get to speak life and truth into your life. You've given them permission
Mhm.
to have that voice into your life. But that's also, those relationships are also massive amounts of support for you that give you courage to take risky steps of faith.
Yeah.
That's so good. Um, so you have been on this journey of learning how to share your life in greater measure over time for 10 plus years.
Mhm.
Um, are there different rhythms throughout various seasons of your family life? So you've got 4 kids, and over the last 10, 12 years, that means you've been in the span of like the crazy years of lots of littles.
Yeah.
Now you're in the kind of, you've got some elementary and teenage kids. What what has made sharing your life in community possible throughout those different seasons? How have you learned things like hospitality? How have you like walk us through some of those things? What's been helpful?
I love that you say, "How have you learned hospitality?" Because that is actually true. There's a lot of things that I had to learn that I did not know. So, like, these aren't things that were just, "Oh, I figured this out." And I was terrible with hospitality. And I was when the kids were younger, I was definitely the idea of having people in our house was really overwhelming. I mean, they're little kids, your house is a mess all the time and it's loud. And so we made a choice. And when they were little, we just made the choice that I think in part my husband knew that it was hard for me. And so we were trying to strategize a way that we could just take small steps instead of like, we're now going to do all these things. And the first thing that we did was we just blocked time. So when they were little, we said, we just need to have a time when we know that if we come across somebody and we feel like we should invite them over for dinner, that that's the night that we're going to have an easy meal that is not going to be hard to put together. And also we like holding the space. And so we don't have to ask like, oh, I can't, what about Friday night? We don't have to go back and forth. We were actually able to make the invitation right when we felt like the time was right. And for us, what we were finding is that because we were so busy that we didn't actually it took us a really long time. And sometimes it takes you so long that like, oh, it takes you a month to get somebody to actually pick a date. That's kind of ridiculous. So it started with once a week we held one night and we wouldn't do anything else. So every like after school or after any activities, like it was a non-negotiable. There was no church things could come in the way. It was like this was the night. And it doesn't mean that we invited somebody over every week. It just meant that was we held the space and we did that for a while, and occasionally had people like can't come in. And what we found is our kids actually loved it. And my oldest daughter started saying, like she's little at the time, and she was like, "Hey, isn't this the night that we have people over? Like, or isn't this the night we have strangers over or something like that?" And I was like, "Oh, so this is like something that you're used to." So we had to be more scheduled when they were younger. That was definitely, and we were driving the bus. So we were the ones making the invitations, doing the majority of the work. In time, the kids understood that like lightweight, low maintenance is our are just a really important value in our family. We have to make everything lightweight, low maintenance, or else it's not sustainable. And so we would do like a quick, tidy cleanup was kind of that was our routine. So we would be able to, it wasn't all falling on me to make sure everything was all set. Um, Frank would make sure that he was home a little bit earlier that night so that he could help with any final preparations. So it was a real family. We have scheduled this, we are building this in. And everybody kind of pitched in and they loved it. And the people that like were able to have over were so different from us, and it was so fun. Like they were just really neat people. So I have like a lot of affection for that, but I think that's important. As the kids got older, things shifted. And so the thing that I did not anticipate was that you move from you being the driving force to helping you're now coming alongside them and allowing them to be the driving force and helping them learn the same skills that you have had to learn. And so for them, what has happened is really both of our oldest two, but especially my daughter is really about involving, she wants to gather people. And so she did that. So last summer, once a week, she like you hear the rhythm here. Once a week when they were kids, we set aside this time. Once a week as teenagers, we've set aside this time that she would have a bonfire and it would be a potluck. And what her ask was I would like to have a bonfire. I would like to invite my friends, but could we also do a potluck so that if any of their families wanted to come, like could we do all of that? And I was like, sure. I would love to tell you that it was like seamless and wonderful, and it was really challenging for me. It was a new learning experience. Like I have to now learn how to navigate that. But it's something that will continue. She'll do it again. So she's gathering people that way. Malcolm, our oldest, plays on the local sports team. They're terrible. They're just awful. They're so bad. They lose everything. But our conversations are this is a field for you. So what does this look like? So again, I'm not the one driving the bus anymore. He's now the one who has to say, who are my people of peace? Who are the people that I think are open to me that don't know anything about faith? And going back to the community piece, who can go with me in this context? So he spent the first year just gathering information, like who are these people? Who's on my team? Who's open to me? And he came back one day and said, what are you noticing? And he's like, what I notice is that a majority of the younger kids on the team are in school all day. And when we have a game, especially an away game, because it was soccer, fall season, they're starving. Like they are starving and they have no food. And I said, what would you like to do about that? And him, being a typical teenage boy, was like, I want to make cookies. And I'm like, no, you should make sandwiches. And he was like, no, I want to make cookies. So I was like, okay. So he brought me in on that. And so I helped him like accomplish the thing. And on the last like the last game of the season, I mean, they had lost. It was terrible. And so we were like, oh, this is, bad way to enter season. It was an away game. Frank and I are on the sidelines, and all of a sudden this huge cheer like erupts from their bench. And I look over and they're all cheering because Malcolm has just brought out the chocolate chip cookies. Like, and he's like the cookie guy. So he needed somebody to be with him in that. And so that's what it looked like the first season. Now he's about to start his third season with them, and he has identified other kids who are people who he's leaning into, like, we need to do this thing. How can we really be kingdom bringers in this space? So it shifts and changes. So as they've gotten older, we've kind of had to track with them in that way. I don't know if does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I think that has been the biggest change, and letting them struggle and letting them flounder around has been challenging. So there's things we do as a family. We've really leaned into our neighborhood a lot, and through that, our neighbors now are like really dear friends of ours. If it hits the fan for them, like they call us, and I, they're on their own spiritual journey. And so we're just tracking with them and we're available and we're here. But the closeness that we have like built over those years is relational things that are in a different And they're different. They're in a different context, and our kids are living in that. Like, my kids just go to their house. What the heck? I'm like, What are you doing?" And they're like, "Oh, we just went down across the street." I'm like, "Uninvited?" You know?
Love
But
it.
so they're learning things about how to build their own community that I think is really important.
That's so good. One of the things that I hear from families is this kind of life that we're talking about, sharing our lives super meaningfully with other believers, but then also starting to take risky steps of faith, interacting with friends and neighbors that don't know Jesus yet. It feels impossible when your life is so busy. So I hear families talking about, but my kids are in all of these activities and like we're gone, we hardly get to eat dinner together at night. So there's just the pressure that's kind of driven by our schedule.
Mm.
um, you guys, I know, have made very specific decisions over time to make space for this and make this a priority. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sometimes you have to sacrifice the good things for the great things. And I think that that's the hard choice that people feel like, well, these things are really good, and you're not wrong. They're really good. Athletics is absolutely fantastic for kids. Music, all of the things that are outside now that are kind of outside the school day and encroach, and all of those things are wonderful for kids. And also, there are good things and there are great things. And so pre-COVID, actually, we stripped down everything and we stopped everything for several months to kind of recalibrate because we found it was probably me more than anybody else. I could not stop the things because I want to do all the good things. And so it was worth it to me to just keep going and make it all happen instead of really evaluating, should we be doing all the things that we're doing at the level that we're doing them. And so we just stopped. We like had to do that. And I had to make the break. It was the only way that I could see clearly. I think COVID, actually, that was the gift of COVID. Can I say that?
Yeah.
It was the gift of
Yeah.
COVID, was that people were given, they were just handed that. Like, you've been so busy and now you're handed this, and you get to get a picture of what life used to be like or what life can be. But you have to always choose. And I think that that's the thing that we don't talk maybe about enough, which is there's always a sacrifice. There's always a sacrifice, and it will never not feel like a sacrifice. So you kind of just have to learn to navigate that and choose what God is asking you to do instead of what like. I want to do all the things, but I need to make sure that first I'm hearing from Jesus. So if he's saying, I understand that I have a limited capacity for relationships, but I can tell you very clearly that if my neighbor is going through a divorce and needs me, I want to be there. Like, that's the place I want to be. If my neighbor is suffering with a job loss and just needs an ear to like vent, that's who I want to be. I want to be in those spaces. I also want to be in the spaces, the more typical, like, like I I hesitate to contrast that with some of the more typical things. Like, I would like to volunteer with the church and do the things, but sometimes I'm like, that's actually not where I've been called because I live here. Like, I live with these people, and this neighbor might not ever have contact with somebody who can have a spiritual conversation with them. So it's important for me to figure out what the best thing is, but I don't have the capacity for that unless I give up other things.
Hmm.
So trying
Mhm.
to wrestle that to the floor, um, and especially with young families in our world, because you can do so many things, it's hard to choose, and sometimes you just have to be the adult and make the choices
Yeah,
there.
so you've said no to specific things with that your kids like activities. You've
Yeah.
pruned back some of those activities so that you can make space for this. I wanna throw you a bit of a curveball question, and that is where we kind of started was talking about the idea of sharing our lives in deep community, and we started talking about more like Christian community, but as we've talked, you've shared a lot of missional stories, and I hear you kind of, a lot of times we piece those things out. So we either have sort of like our small group, our discipleship group, and then we separate out the conversations around mission. You've really integrated that conversation. And so when we talk about making disciples in community, you're actually talking about both of those things. Why?
Yeah, I mean, isn't that what Jesus did?
Hmm.
Like, um, I I mean, if as I read the Gospels, I see him going into houses of the non-believing people and at every different level and engaging with them in their own context and in a way that brought along both sides. Like the conversations are who is and I often wonder like who if like thinking as Jesus, who am I to all of these people in this space? So I think about that a lot. Like who is Jesus? Who does Jesus want to be for all these people around my table? And what I think and what I have seen over and over again is that the faith of a Christian dramatically changes when they are in that context with people who are asking questions, people who are atheists, people who have had a church hurt and they just can't get over it, and so it has really dramatically affected their relationship with God. In those conversations, things change, and it changes for everybody. And I think that's the beauty of the gospel. When it is separated, it does not feel whole. There does not feel like there's a holisticness behind it at all. It feels inside, the way I would describe it is I feel like somebody has peeled off a piece of who I am and you're only allowed to do this over here. Probably not only allowed. That's probably not a great way to describe it, but you you, you only have this, and over here you only have this. When I have all those people in the room, I feel whole. I feel like this is what Jesus was about. Um, the table is super important to me. Like we have a sign outside of our door that says there's always room at the table, and that for us is like a super high value. I want people to know that that is the space for you. You are always welcome at my table, no matter what. You you might get a random assortment of food, but like you're always welcome at the table because I think that that's where he did the majority of his ministry. It was in living life together. And I just think, I mean, I read this is not my own, but over this Easter holiday, the bookends of Jesus starts with the Passover at around the table, this loud, boisterous celebration meal, and then when he comes back, it's back into the upper room around a table, like here I am, and I just feel like there's something beautiful and super important about that. But
So
I
it's
think it's both.
yeah, it's the integrated life. So as we're
Yeah,
following Jesus, where we started was this idea of pursuing God with passion, pursuing intimacy with Jesus, sharing our lives in community, um, and with people around us that don't know Jesus yet. Love it.
yeah, yeah.
Austin, thanks for this conversation. It was very fun today. If you're listening in and you are wanting more equipping around how to be and make new disciples, either in your church setting or in your everyday life, would love to have you check out the Make Disciples resource page at visionnew.england.org. And we're doing monthly Disciple Maker digital workshops for everyday people to learn how to make disciples in their everyday life. We're also starting some new things. We're doing these Leader Lab workshop days for pastors and church teams to come and talk much more about some of the things that Austin brought up today and how we create that as a culture, a discipling culture in our churches. We're also going to be launching a new 2-year learning community cohort for church teams to really dive into building a discipling culture in their context. So head over to visionnew.england.org and check out the Make Disciples resource page. Thanks for joining us for the Church in Action.
To support this program and accelerate evangelism, go to visionnew.england.org and click on Donate, or click Member to become a partner with us. This program is supported by the Palau Association, who are dedicated to proclaiming the good news, uniting the church, and impacting cities worldwide.
At Leadership Transformations, we believe that when you have the right resources to help you slow down and experience a deep and refreshing connection to God, you can become the discerning leader you know you are created to be. Friends, Steve Macchia here, and I have a free gift for your soul. It's called Pathways. Pathways is our weekly email aimed at offering you soul-nourishing content for the journey. It contains readings, prayers, spiritual practices, a link to the Discerning Leader podcast, as well as information about all of our upcoming soul care retreats, workshops, and online offerings. So head on over to leadershiptransformations.org today and sign up for this free resource. It will help you slow down and be more. God bless you, friends.